Hello guys, my name is Nirul Janyavala. I am a current student at Monroe Township High School who is taking AP Seminar, and today I will teach you and guide you to the summer assignment for the AP Seminar EOC, and you can look back at this to help you for the real EOC AP exam. This video will be on part A, and together with Sudhansh, Ojas, and Rashan, I have made a slideshow to make sure you guys succeed. So first, part A, the basics. What is part A? It's 3 questions. You get a source and an article. It could be about anything really. The topic this year, the one you have is about privacy. The recommended time is 30 minutes, but you could take 40 to 45 if needed. You'll still have plenty of time for part B. So this on the real exam. And part A is 13.5% of your overall AP seminar score. So, and that is like throughout the whole entire AP exam. So it's 30% of the EOC grade, which is equal to 13.5% of your overall AP seminar score. So note, please read the documents with the directions and questions themselves. These are just tips to guide your EOC exam and your summer assignment. This should not be the only thing you look at to write. Look at the rubric too. So overview of the questions. What are the questions? The first question is just identify the author's argument. The second question is explain how the author builds that argument, so their line of reasoning. And the third question, evaluate the strength of evidence. Is it relevant, credible, and connected? Question 1, how do you identify the argument? Well, it's not too long. It's 1 to 2 sharp and focused sentences, and the argument isn't just the title or the conclusion. It's built across the whole article, and it should definitely be done after reading everything. Watch for transitions to spot different parts of the argument, and be specific. Avoid vague summaries. So look at this. This person had a perfect score on their argument section, and it's only 1 sentence. It just says the author argues that greed, despite its benefit to the economy, also is a detriment to human health. Now, without knowing the context of this, as you can see, it just showing you the format. It's not too long, but as you can see, it's focused, it's sharp, and it cuts straight to the point with no add-ons and just says the author's argument and ends it. And that's all you really need. It doesn't have to be 3 sentences, 4 sentences. It should just the author's argument with nothing less and nothing more. Question 1, how to score high. To score high, you want to correctly identify all of the main parts of the argument. You want to demonstrate understanding of the argument as a whole, and you want to include all parts of the argument. So like as an example, writing by hand should be taught in addition to keyboarding because it activates the brain, improving memory, impulse control, attention, and enhances compositional skills and helps students perform better in school. As you can see through the example, it's not too long. It's 1 sentence, but this is how you get a perfect score. It talks about all the different subclaims, and I would say it is smart to include all the subclaims in your argument so they can, in your when in question 1, when you're identifying the argument, include all the subclaims. I think it will really help you score high as you're explaining all the main parts of the argument. You could also, as shown in this, say despite, like how you would do in like a thesis on a DBQ or something like that, where you say despite. That could also work. This one didn't, but it depends on the article really. But make sure you have all the parts, and you have to show that you understand the argument. Now, question 2, explaining the line of reasoning. So first, make sure you focus on how the claims connect, how they come together to build the author's argument. A good tip I have is underline or label claims C as you read, so really help you when you're writing. And move through the article in order. Chronological means it's clear, and also when you're writing this, make sure the claims are in order. Don't mix and match the claims. Like the claim that comes third, don't make that your first paragraph. Definitely make it in order. And use verbs like builds, contrasts, reinforces instead of just says to make it look professional and make it really convey what the line of reasoning is. Now, you can summarize briefly if needed, but your goal is to explain, not summarize. And for summer assignment, do 1 to 2 sentences for explaining each claim, and do 1 sentence for each connection of a claim. Not the whole paragraph, as it's not the real exam, but on the exam, one thing, a quick tip, is do not overwrite the second question. Something that I went through and like a lot of my peers did is for this question on the actual exam, they would spend more than 20 minutes on it. they would spend a lot on this question, which would take a lot of time on their part A. And you don't really need to write that much. 3 to 5, on the real exam, it's 3 to 5 sentences and 4 to 5 paragraphs. Question 2, how to score high. So you want to provide a thorough explanation of the author's line of reasoning. You want to identify the relevant claims, and you want to explain the connections among those claims. You want to make sure you accurately identify most of the claims. The sources given, it will definitely have at least 4 main claims, 4 to 5. Even though you might think there's 3, really think some of the claims might seem similar but split up into 2 main parts. So it could, instead of being 3, be 4. Clearly explain the relationship between claims and how they relate to the overall argument. So how the author builds their line of reasoning, how the author builds their argument together through connecting these claims, and that's really what you want to talk about. Question 3, evaluating the evidence. So underline or label evidence E while reading. This could help on paper ones. On the digital, you can't really do this, but it could help to some way mark it. So you want to comment on the relevance. So you want to, and the credibility. So to evaluate a piece of evidence, it has to be 2 things. Or you have to evaluate the 2 main things. Relevance. Does the evidence support the claim directly? And credibility. Is the source trustworthy? So let's say the source is trying to back up the fact that social media is, causing teens to have a worse mental health. And a piece of evidence says, it says digital smartphones negatively impact an adult's mental health. Now that is a little bit less relevant than a source talking about teens when the author is trying to argue for teens. See how the evidence has to be relevant to be effective. For when you evaluate it, make sure it's very relevant and it really supports their claims. And this is why this is the last question, because you know what the claims are, and you want to see, does this evidence support one of the claims? Does it build the author's argument? Is it relevant to it, or is it just talking about something completely different, which makes the argument weaker? And credibility. Where is the source from? Is it from, if they say nothing, a lot of times they do. They'll just say nothing. Sometimes they'll say from a scientist. They'll say from a study. Make sure they say what type of study. Make sure they give the name of the scientist. Make sure they say if they're from a university professor, stuff like that, or if it's from a journal. Those are credible. From a big study like a or journal article, a PhD scientist, those, or a university professor, those are credible, but sometimes they might not be. So always say why the evidence is strong or weak. Let's say there's a piece of evidence that is very relevant, but it's not credible at all. That makes the evidence weak, and that make sure you say this either weakens or strengthens the argument. So maybe there's a piece of evidence that's from a journal article, highly relevant. You want to say this strengthens the argument and this supports the argument as the evidence is highly relevant and highly credible because it's an academic journal. And say why it is, and then say if it strengthens or weakens. Use an objective tone, not emotional praise or judgment, and point out missing or weak evidence if applicable. So footnotes and omitted text. Use footnotes as part of your evaluation. They'll tell you more about sources, and ignore anything that's omitted. So shown by an ellipsis, it doesn't matter, and do not guess at what was cut out. So part A, graphic organizer. So you want to think of the thesis main idea, that's question 1. And then question 2, the claims, line of reasoning. There should be 4, maybe there's 5, only there's about 4. And then question 3, evidence. Question 3 is also the same format, where it's in 4 to 5 paragraphs that are each 3 to 5 sentences each. I think I did 5 on the exam. 4 maybe, but I would say aim for 5 that are like 3 to 5 sentences each. Just comment on the credibility, relativity, why it's strong or weak, and if it strengthens or weakens the argument, and just do that. It's not as hard as finding the claims. It's not as hard as question 2. We have to really think. You kind of just know from seeing the evidence. So tips from someone who took it. Sometimes the article might be longer than you expect. The one I took was definitely longer than I expected. You want to have a backup plan for your time. So if you go up to 45 to 55 minutes, that is fine. Just make sure you're ready for part B, and do not overwrite questions 2 and 3. You really want to have quality over quantity. This is the main reason people take more than 40 minutes. Just make sure you answer the question to the whole extent. You don't have to repeat yourself. It can be a little bit condensed. You want to spend about 5 to 10 minutes reading, depending on how long the article is. And a small tip is do question 2 before question 1 to get the most accurate argument. This, you don't have to do this, but if you really want to have the most accurate of the main argument, then you could do question 2, listing all the main claims, and then do question 1. Because question 1 is very short, and if you need to change it, you can. So high versus medium versus low scoring responses. So a high score question 1 just covers all key parts of the argument. A medium will miss or overgeneralize part of the argument, and a low scoring response will misstate or totally oversimplify the argument. Remember, question 1 is not too hard. It's really easy to get a 3 out of 3 on it. It's out of 3 points, a little bit less. If you get a 2 out of 3, that's probably just because you missed something or you're a little bit too simplified. So just be specific and don't be too long. So question 2, to get a high score, you want to explain how the claims connect and support the argument. For a medium score, for a medium score would, not that you want to get a high score obviously, a medium score would list claims with some explanation but lack depth and connection, and low would probably just list claims or just summaries with no connections. Remember, you have to explain how each claim connects to others, explain the claims and how these claims and their connections builds the author's line of reasoning and their argument. This one is probably the hardest question to get a high scoring response, but to get a 6, that's what you need to do. Now question 3, this question's, in my opinion, a little bit easier than question 2. You want to just evaluate specific evidence, reasoning and examples, talk about their credibility, talk about their relevancy, and just say if it strengthens or weakens the argument, and be specific. Mediums, you might mention the evidence, but it's too vague or too general. You might just say that this evidence is weak because it's irrelevant. Well, you want to talk about how it's not relevant or how it's not credible and why this weakens the argument. Low is, again, just way too broad, unsupported statements about the evidence. You don't even use the evidence, This one is easy to score high. Just make sure you're listing everything. Final tips. Don't panic. You practiced all year. Your teacher, before this exam, you've done a couple practice. Use your AP seminar vocabulary, claims, reasoning, relevance, etc. Do not overgeneralize. Write clearly and explain your thinking. Take your time. Up to 45 minutes is fine. And on digital tests, once you move past question 3, you cannot go back. But when you're not past that, you can change between each question if you ever want to change anything. Do not stress. You will get much better at this throughout the year. This is basically an introduction to your EOC. Bye and thank you, and I hope you succeed on your summer packet and on your exam. Have a good day.